from sea to shining sea throughout the solar system, and extending to interstellar regions beyond. This is the Kevin Smith Show. Talk radio like nowhere else on Earth.
Comments and views expressed on The Kevin Smith Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kevin Smith, The Kevin Smith Show, or its affiliates or sponsors.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the Kevin Smith Show, whoever you are, wherever you happen to be, all around this beautiful place we call Earth. Thanks for being here at the Kevin Smith Show. I'm here because you have a right to know and because you matter. Let me remind you, if you already know, and let me inform you, if you don't know, we have a free weekly newsletter. It's called the K-Files, and it's good. And it is truly free. You can unsubscribe anytime you want to, but you first have to be subscribed, and there's no genius in not getting this publication. To subscribe, just scoot over to my website, kevinsmithshow.com, and click where it says K-Files. Subscribe. You'll get an automatic email with a link in it to activate your subscription. Do that, and you're in. Also, let me tell you that Jose Escamilla's new film, his latest film, Celestial, is out, and it is on YouTube, the whole thing. Those who have been listening to this show for some time remember a few weeks back, we had a couple of months back, we had Jose Escamilla as a guest on the show, and we looked at some clips from the then upcoming movie, and it was pretty phenomenal. Well, he's finished, and it's out, and you can watch the whole thing at YouTube. Just go over there and do a search for Celestial, and perhaps Celestial Escamilla, and you'll find it. It's worth watching. Back on June the 18th, 2009, at 5:32 p.m., at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station Launch Complex 41, an Atlas V rocket lifted off and headed for the moon. Atop that Atlas V rocket was something called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Interestingly, on NASA's website, their blurb about it has this statement, that it lifted off, it went to the moon, and I quote, to begin NASA's return to the moon missions. Well, that was in 2009. And now we know NASA isn't going back to the moon. Something changed quickly. Did the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, with its high-resolution double-lens reflex camera, provide the reasons that President Obama canceled the return to the moon? Perhaps. Tonight, we're going to take a look at a picture we've looked at before. But I have to admit, I missed something. When we looked at this before, I wasn't looking at it for the purpose of looking for anomalies. We had a whole different purpose in mind, and I'll remind you of that a bit later. But tonight, we're going to look at something very anomalous in that same picture. We'll be back right after this.
Join the members area yet?
Why not?
All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show, and our look at our re-look at a photograph that we have talked about here on the show before. Now, this is a photograph of a crater called, most people pronounce it Tycho. I think it's actually Tycho, or it's Tycho, I think is how they pronounce it. Now, when we looked at this before, and by the way, that's what you're seeing on the screen right now, and it is a free-to-watch night, as I announced on my Facebook wall. So if you're watching the show live tonight, it's free to watch. If at some future date we rebroadcast this show and you hear us talking about it being free to watch, well, it may not be free to watch at that time. But you can watch all the time if you are a member, so be sure you join. Okay, so we've put the link to this photograph. It is straight from NASA's site, and this is a link to the full resolution photograph. That's what we're looking at. And when we looked at this before, it was for the purpose of comparing it to some other photographs taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Just to remind you, the other photographs were of Apollo landing sites. And you may remember that all the headlines were talking about clearest images ever of the Apollo landing sites. And what I did was I showed you this exact same orbiter, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, took pictures of the Apollo landing sites, and it took pictures of the Tycho crater. And I used this picture of the Tycho crater to compare with what you saw in the Apollo landing sites, so that you could see there was really no comparison. The Apollo landing sites were really pretty awful photographs. Now, it was taken with the same camera. This camera has resolution down to 1 meter. Now, to give you an idea of the expanse of 1 meter, if you're watching on the screen, you should be able to see. You can see my hands. Okay, the space between my hands is about 1/2 meter. So double that space. Double that space, and that's the resolution that this camera can take. The photographs of the Apollo landing site told what the resolution was. The resolution of the Apollo landing site was said to be 3 times greater resolution than the picture, the photo of the Tycho crater. But I showed you that the Tycho crater was crystal clear, and the one that they were showing us of the Apollo landing site was not. Now, that was the purpose for which we looked at this photograph of Tycho, and I was not at that time looking for any kind of anomalies in this Tycho crater photograph. Well, through a series of conversations I've had and emails I've gotten since then, and the conversation I had this week with the owner of one of the networks that carries this show, I took another look. And I found something pretty amazing. Now, you will remember, I'm sure, that just a few months back, the Chinese started releasing some photographs and some video from their orbiter. I think it was called the Chang'e, maybe Cheng orbiter, CHANG''E. And you will recall that there is in their set of photographs some amazing shots of some kind of huge facility, unquestionably an artificial facility, clearly setting on the moon. And we did a show about that. And then you wonder, well, doesn't NASA get anything that clear? Doesn't NASA get stuff that's... and the answer to that, folks, is of course they do. The stuff they release to us is not the clearest and best that they have. It's the clearest and best they're going to let you see. It's not the clearest and best that they have. And even this one of the Tycho crater is not the clearest and best that they have. It is doctored, and I'm going to show you that it's doctored, but they still left some stuff in there. So let's go over to the crater and let's begin our examination. What a clear shot. This is a mountain range, well, not a range, but a mountain and some foothills in the bottom of the Tycho crater. But how tall is it? How wide is it, etc.? Well, we'll be taking a look at that as we go along. But this time, we're going to look at what did we miss. Now, just to point out a couple of features, there is, and you may need to go full screen, you may need to watch this on full screen so you can see some of this. There is the tallest peak of this mountain, and to give you an idea of size, that is 1.24 miles tall. So from the bottom of this mountain to the top of that peak is over 5,000 feet. It's 1.24 miles. You will see that there is a little hollowed out kind of crater right to the left of that peak, still at the top of the mountain. And we have an arrow pointing there. There is a boulder sitting there. It looks like a little white dot. Well, that's 328 feet across. So that gives you a little idea of the distances and the size of things. So here's a picture that marks it a little differently. And so we have a vertical line showing you that from the crater floor to the top of that peak is 1.24 miles. From the top of that peak extending over to the right where we're going to be looking, we just take the same red line that's 1.24 miles and we extend it to the right. But it doesn't go all the way to where we're going to be looking, so we have a little yellow line extending the rest of the way. So that's approximately from the top of that peak to the area we're going to look at. It's approximately 1.5 miles, 1.5 miles. Now, I ask a question at the beginning of the show, and that is, did the LRO, that's the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, did the LRO, with its high-resolution double-lens reflex camera, provide the reasons that President Obama canceled the return to the moon? Now, we all heard the story that it was because of budget. We just can't afford to do that. But at the same time, in the very same breath of air, we were giving $1 trillion away to bankers. See, this doesn't make sense. This makes as much sense as when NASA canceled the Apollo program with 2 missions already built and paid for. One of them already nearly completely assembled and the crew had already been selected, and the astronauts already selected and trained and ready to fly, and they had already been paid for. NASA canceled those 2 missions and said, budget. Well, see, that made no sense, did it? Because they were paid for already. They didn't owe any money on those. And they said, budget. And they canceled them. Very mysterious. And we never went back to the moon. We never again got out of low Earth orbit. Now, I know some people will say, we never went to the moon to start with. Okay, I understand that debate. That's not part of this story. Whatever it is you think they were doing, they never did it again. And they said it was because of budget. Do you buy that story? Well, I've never bought that story. I think most of the world never bought that story. I mean, they may as well have come out and told us we had problems with our weather balloons. Or, Chinese wedding lamps got in the way and we couldn't launch. All of those are just as believable as budget problems when it's already paid for. So very, very mysterious. So here we are with the very first mission. Remember, George W. Bush, when he was president, said we're going to go back to the moon and then on to Mars. So NASA geared up for that, and they started building. And this is the first of the return to the moon missions. As it turns out, it's the last. Because it launched in 2009, and then what happened? The return to the moon, shortly after the LRO got there and started taking pictures, shortly after that, they said, we're not going back to the moon. Why? We can't afford it. Why? Well, budget problems. There's not enough money for us to go back to the moon. And at the same time, we were handing out $1 trillion like it was candy on Halloween Eve to bankers, automobile manufacturers, virtually anybody with their hand out, passing money out like it was candy. But we didn't have a few paltry drops out of that bucket to fund NASA. Nonsense. That is nonsense. That's where you play the song by Todd Sharpville, Somebody's Been Lying to Me. So what happened? Did the LRO come up with some pictures that made them reconsider the wisdom of returning to the moon? Now, they already had all these pictures. They already knew there were facilities everywhere. But perhaps they just didn't have pictures of high enough resolution to be able to determine exactly what they were looking at. Now, what we're going to look at tonight, I don't know what it is. I know it's not the moon. It's on the moon. It's built. But I don't know, I can't tell by looking at it what kind of a facility it is, but some of you are engineers. Some of you are physicists, you're scientists. You know what you're looking at. And when we look at this, I want you to look very closely at it. And I want you, when we open the phones later in the show, I want you to call in and talk to us and tell us what you think it is. I know you're not there, so you can't tell exactly, precisely, 100%. I understand that. That's cool. But you're an engineer, or you're a physicist, you're a scientist, and when you look at this, something's going to pop into your mind, and you'll be able to say, well, that looks like. whatever. And I want you to call and share that with us when you see this. Some of you are in the aerospace industry, and maybe it pops into your mind that this is a certain type of facility. I don't know. You need to know one other thing. You need to know that in the course of doing a little research for this, I found a video on YouTube in which a guy was talking about cities on the moon, and he was talking about cities right there in the Tycho crater. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't see cities. I honestly didn't. However, many of the things he talked about, I did see. He talks about how, you see right here where NASA has smudged this? Yeah, I can see the smudges. I didn't see cities. And I will tell you this, though. I saw more than what we're going to talk about tonight because we simply don't have time to look at all of it. But I did see more than what we're going to be able to get to tonight. So this prompted me, when I watched the video, it prompted me to take a very, very close look. And I looked at the Tycho crater on several sites, and then I decided to go over to NASA and download their full resolution, the big picture, the full resolution picture. And that's what we're working with here tonight, is this full resolution photo. And what it shows is startling. Before, I know you want me to show it, and we're going to, but before we do, let me ask you, do you think it's nuts when we talk about there's somebody on the moon? Do you think that's nuts? If there was a vacant house next door and you came home from work and your wife said, you know, I think there's somebody staying in that house, and you ask why, because I can smell cooking. They're cooking in there. Would you think she was nuts? She's telling you evidence.
Hi, this is Marco from Los Angeles, and you're listening to The Kevin Smith Show.
All right, welcome back to The Kevin Smith Show. We're talking about a touch of Tycho, or Tycho, talking about the crater as photographed on the moon by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Okay, so let's start getting into some details here, and I want you to be able to understand what you're looking at in terms of distances and sizes, okay? So we've already taken a look at this photograph, and this photograph shows the mountain and foothills in the Tycho crater. And we can see that the peak is 1.24 miles from the crater floor. So if we take the red line that shows 1.24 miles to the top of the peak and then bend that same distance over to the right, we get almost to where we're going to focus. But before we go over there and focus, let's look at what's at the top of this mountain. The peak and the boulder. All right? So now we're looking right at the top peak, and we can see that boulder sitting in the depression there at the top, and it's 328 feet across from side to side. 328 feet. If you look very, very closely to the left of that boulder and downhill just a bit, you can see some structures in the sort of the crevice there. I don't know what they are. If you look very closely, some of those look very decidedly artificial. But that's not where we're going to focus. We're going to focus way over on the right of that mountain, and you saw where the red line was extending over to the right, and then a little yellow line extending further. That's where we're going. And this is it. Before I do anything at all here, do you see anything? Just let your eye roam over that expanse. Now let me go back to a shot that shows you where we are. You see the red line extending to the right, and then a little yellow line extending further? That's where we are, okay? So what do you see? All right, now here I've zoomed in just a little bit, and I've adjusted the contrast just a little bit. Do you see anything yet? I think it's pretty fascinating, to tell you the truth, because I see all kinds of structure in there, but you're really going to see it pretty clearly here. There is a circle feature. Do you see that circular feature? Right in the middle of your screen, right in the middle of the picture. And I'm just estimating, based on the fact that this is 1.5 miles further away from the camera lens, and it's about 1/4 mile further downrange from the camera lens. So using the boulder as a standard, they tell us it's 328 feet across. So now we go 1.5 miles downrange to the right, and 1/4 mile down uprange away from us, and I'm estimating that's about 900 feet. That circular feature is about 900 feet. But we can see all kinds of other features that we're going to take a look at, all up the edge of this precipice, and that's what it is. We're looking basically at the back of a facility that's facing out towards that shadow. Now, there are two areas that we're going to look at. I have marked those two areas. One of them I've marked in red with a red line, and we're going to look at all of that along that edge of the precipice facing out toward the shadow. There's another area that we're going to look at, and we'll zoom in on both of these, and it's marked with yellow, and it's back closer to the peak. The peak is to our left. The peak of the mountain is to our left and way up. I've also marked an area that has a blur inserted. You can see it in this picture. You can see a blurred area in this picture. And I'm not sure what's setting there, but whatever it is, when I zoom in on this and you see how clearly we can see the features of this facility, when you see how clear it is, and then you look at the blurred area. My mind asks this question: if they left all of this in and didn't blur it, what must be in that blurred area that they didn't want you to see? Remember, this LRO has a resolution down to 1 meter. Remember that we have examined this photograph before, and you can do this yourself. I put the picture up with the link to it. You can do this yourself. You can go over there and download this picture, and you can zoom in. You can look very, very closely at the ground and even see individual rocks laying on the ground. I mean, this is the full resolution picture. And so the question is, in my mind, what is it in the blur? They left all of this facility stuff in there. What's in that blur they didn't want you to see? The blur is not something that just happened, I don't think. I think it's inserted. I think it was blurred on purpose. And I'm going to show you some more smudges later in another area of this picture. But if they were going to leave all this facility stuff in, what must be behind the blur? That is really fascinating. That is really curious. Okay, so let's do a little zoom. Let's take a look at this facility, at least part of it. And now we can see that this circular thing, and this is where I want you engineers and scientists and some of you aerospace people, you're looking at something here, and something jumped into your mind immediately when we zoomed in, and your mind said, well, that looks like... Okay, so whatever it is you think it looks like, I want you to call us later, not right now, but when I open the telephone lines later, I want you to call us and tell us what you think that is. So we can see this circular, it looks like a big circular half-circle pipe, like a big tube, a big pipe, and it is big. And just to the left of it, it's a half circle. So in the half where there's not pipe, it looks like a spherical thing sitting there. And then beyond it, we can see buildings. And just to give you perspective again so that you can see, we're not looking straight down on top of this. We're looking at an airborne angle. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at an airborne angle shot of this. And so we can see the sides of that building. And when we look at the sides of that building, we can see, I see anyway, what looks like to me windows? I don't know. That's what it looks like to me. But this is on the side of a precipice. It's on the side. If I back up, you can see how there is a sharp drop off on the side towards us. Well, we can assume you have the same thing on the other side, a sharp drop off towards the floor of the crater. And so this thing, whatever it is perched right up there on the edge, facing away from us, facing the shadow, and there it sits. Now, does that look like geology did that? Does that look like something natural, or does that look like to you that somebody built that? Well, to me, it looks like somebody built it. And we can see pretty clearly that there's, I zoomed in on the area where that half-circle pipe is, and it's big. Whatever that is, that's big. That's approximately 900 feet from side to side of that thing. And approximately 900 feet. So it's big. And we can see that there's stuff built out there on the surface between where I've marked it. You see with the red lines, I've marked way up, that's about, something like 2 miles from that circle. It's close to 2 miles from the circle up to the upper end where that red line ends up there, right under where it says contrast adjusted. That's close to 2 miles. So there's a lot of stuff in there, and there is something sitting there under a blur, under a smudge. I don't know what you think about it, but I'll tell you what I think about it. I don't think I'm looking at geology. I don't think I'm looking at natural formations. I think I'm looking at architecture and engineering. What kind of engineering? What's its purpose? I don't know. But I've heard a lot of people say, after the pictures of the Chinese mission, or from the Chinese mission, started coming out, and people were talking about, that big facility that is in the Chinese pictures on the moon. People started talking about that, and I talked about it. And one of the things I heard people say is, well, surely NASA's got something like this. If stuff like that's really up there, surely NASA's got it. And I would submit to you, yes, they do. And this is one example of what they've got. And I would submit to you that it's a possibility that, we're looking at what they're calling the full resolution picture here. Okay? I would submit to you there's a possibility they have something of even higher resolution, and that they have correctly and accurately identified not only this facility but others in terms of what they are and what their purpose is. And perhaps this is the reason. Perhaps this is why they decided we can't go back to the moon. Some of you know what we just looked at, or at least something popped into your mind, and you said, you know what? That looks like a whatever. When I open the phones later, I want to hear from you. What do you think that is? We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show, and a Touch of Tycho. A Touch of Tycho, or Tycho, has to do with a crater on the moon and amazing things in the photograph that NASA has on their website. And I've been putting the link up for people to see tonight. If you're watching live, it's free to watch live. And you just go over to my website and click where it says watch. It couldn't be easier. So we've been talking about amazing things found in this photograph. And what we've looked at is, in my estimation, breathtaking, because we can see that there is a constructed facility right there. That's what it looks like, right there on the edge of this, the foothill of this mountain that's in the bottom of the Tycho crater. And I asked the question at the beginning of the show, I'll ask it again. Did the LRO provide such high-resolution photographs finally that they were able to look at some of these anomalies and perhaps military people and intelligence people, people who work in air intelligence, and they look at photographs from the air and identify things. Perhaps they looked at some of these facilities, maybe this one, and said, we don't need to be going back there. This might not be safe. We probably need to leave this alone. I take us back now to the Apollo missions. I mentioned it earlier. I'll mention it again because there's something I want to ask. There were 2 Apollo missions already built and paid for. One of them virtually ready to fly. It had a few final assembly things to go out to the launch pad. And the crew already selected, and NASA canceled. After Apollo 17, bam, that was it. And they said, budget problems. Well, that can't be true because it was already paid for. It was already paid for. The money was already gone from their budget. Already paid for. And they canceled. And no other explanation. Well, we just had budget problems. Now, we know from a book written by Maurice Chatelain, who was the director of communications for the Apollo flights. He says that the astronauts were warned off the moon. They were told not to come back. So my question is, they had this warning, they were told not to come back, they took it seriously, and we never went back. We've never been out of low Earth orbit since. So here's my question. Maybe they thought that now we have the capability of getting some good pictures of these facilities, and maybe we can go back. Is it possible, here's the question, is it possible that when this first mission, I'm quoting now, I'm going to quote from NASA's website. NASA's website, if you go to their site for the LRO, for the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, you will see right down at the bottom of the page, the last statement was that this mission was to begin, I'm quoting, to begin NASA's return to the moon missions. Is it possible that this first flight of the beginning of the return to the moon, the LRO, provided images like what we've been looking at? And I assure you, what they looked at is much clearer than what we're getting to see. They tell us this is the full resolution. I assure you, they have better pictures than what they release to you. So, is it possible they took a look at some of these very clear images of facilities on the moon, and people with the expertise to do so identified those as something that indicates it really might not be safe for us to go back? I know that we were told it's budget. I know that's what we were told. But you know, the problem with that is at the same time that they were telling us it's budget problems, our government was passing out $1 trillion like it was candy. They were throwing it at everything. And they couldn't squeeze a measly few billion into the NASA cup. That is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It makes no sense at all. Okay, now we've taken a look at this zoomed in picture of the red area. Now I want to move to the yellow area. In the yellow area, and just again to give you a context of what we're looking at, here's the yellow area right here. Okay? So in that yellow area, look at that. You can see very clearly that there's a couple of areas that are smudged here. Now, with a camera with this kind of resolution, you don't get smudges like this. Or at least I would think you wouldn't. But we can see quite clearly there are some smaller buildings right there on that ridge. It's not quite as clear as the picture of the facility that has that big circular area. It's not quite as clear as that. But that's because the size of these structures is much smaller. Now, lest you think I have not zoomed to the exact same percentage here, I will tell you that what we're looking at is exactly the same picture. I just scooted it over in your screen so that you can see this area. So it is the same picture, the exact same zoom percentage. We have something smudged out on the right, and actually, if you look carefully, right between where you see the word buildings and the word smudge, right between that, it looks like perhaps that's a tower sticking up into the air. And if so, it's got some kind of a sphere up on top of it. But it's a mystery to me why they would smudge some things and leave other things. So let me go back and show you. Unzoomed, well, it is zoomed, but not a whole lot. We can see a blur. I've got it marked. It says NASA blur, and you can see that. But look at all the stuff they left. They didn't smudge out. I don't know, folks. That's a mystery. But when you look at what they left, and you see what they left, then it's pretty amazing that they smudged anything. You got to wonder what in the heck was in the smudged area, because just look at what they left. All right, now let's move on. Let's move on to what's down below. Because what's down below is a pyramid. Not only is it a pyramid, there's some sort of structure on the left side of this pyramid, kind of like, a temple. You can see columns. Very strange, very interesting, and for my money, it's astounding. And that's at the bottom. That's on the floor of the crater. So down below that facility we've been looking at, to the right and down the slope, there is, for all the world, something that looks like a pyramid. It's not a real tall one, but it's there. And you can see that it is a pyramid if you just look at the shadow up above it. All right, we're going to step away for a break, and we'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. Those of you who are joining us just now in this second hour, welcome aboard. I'm glad you're here. My sincere sympathy to you for whatever it is that kept you away from that first hour. you've missed many galaxies of information, believe me. And you can if you join, if you're a member, you'll get to watch this show for the next 24 hours. It'll be up online. And then, of course, the podcast will be in our archives in the K-Pods from now on. So we're talking about facilities on the moon, and we're going to take a look at that pyramid again in just a moment. But we're talking about some really big facilities on the moon, photographed by NASA, and the photographs on their website. That's where this came from. Now, I want to go to that house next door that I mentioned. Let's say the house next door to you has been vacant for 20 years. It's always been vacant. Ever since you've lived where you live, that house next door has been vacant. You come home from work one day and your spouse says to you, I think there's somebody in that house. I think somebody's living in there. And you ask, well, why? And your spouse says, well, because I can smell cooking coming from that house. Somebody's cooking in there. And now you say, well, no, that house has always been vacant. Everybody knows that house is vacant. You're just imagining things. So a few days later, you come home from work, and your spouse says to you, I think somebody's in there. And this time you say, well, why? And this time she says, or he says, I heard noises coming from there. No, that house has always been vacant. You're just imagining things. Okay. Wouldn't you think that would be a little ridiculous? Your spouse is telling you that there was the smell of the aroma of cooking coming from the house, and then there are sounds coming from the house, and you're still saying everybody knows that house is vacant. And you tell your spouse you're imagining things. So one day you come home from work, and your spouse says, I know there's somebody there. And you ask why, and your spouse says, because there was a car out front, and I took a picture of it, and they moved it into the garage, but now here's the picture. I took a Polaroid of it. Here's the picture. And you look at it, and you say, well, that doesn't prove anything. This is the same sort of nonsense that debunkers are doing with these photographs from the moon, from Mars, and even, yes, from Venus. It's the same sort of nonsense. The evidence is the evidence is the evidence. It's not my evidence. I didn't go up there and take these pictures. NASA did. NASA put this picture on their website. And NASA didn't smudge everything out. NASA left lots of stuff in. And when we zoom in on it and take a look at what they left in, it is breathtaking. We're looking at something that is not geography. We're looking at architecture and engineering. But the debunker says, well, you must be mistaken. You got to be mistaken here because everybody knows that the moon is barren and dead. Yeah, but there's facilities on the moon. Well, you're imagining things. Those pictures are not that clear. So new satellites go up, and the new satellite has very high resolution capabilities, down to 1 meter. And so now we say, okay, take a look at this. And the debunker says, you're imagining. It's just your imagination. Everybody knows the moon is dead and barren. It's the same nonsense as I set up with that example about the vacant house next door. Somebody is on that moon. Somebody is there. Now, what do you think that facility is? Let's go to the telephone. 623-444-5889 is the number. And caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Kevin, this is Jerome from Pennsylvania.
Hello, Jerome.
Hi. May I start with a real trivial point here?
Sure.
You keep referring to Tycho and then Tycho. I wish you would stop that. You never refer to Tycho by itself. Whenever you use the term Tycho, it's always Tycho. I realize it's trivial, but you always refer to Tycho with the phrase Tycho. But then
you know why? Because let me explain why. It is Tycho, but I'm speaking to a very large American audience who doesn't understand that is Greek, and they pronounce it Tycho.
Okay, I'll just deal with it then. It gets. I mean, I just wish you'd just call it one or the other and just go with it. But
okay,
I'll deal with
well,
that.
We'll take a look at the one or the other crater. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, on the bailouts that you brought in for the budget there, on the budget, those are all the result of the unelected, unfederal Federal Reserve.
Doesn't matter. The money that goes to every government agency is money that is as a result of the Federal Reserve. There's not any currency in the United States. There's no currency in the United States that is legal tender that is not Federal Reserve.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, and I'll accept that for whatever reason they decide not to budget it in.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we were on the moon and then we elected to not publicly go back, I think there's something rotten in Denmark.
Oh, I do too. And, this picture, and there are many others, but because I had used this picture before and had missed this, I decided to use it for tonight's show. But there are lots of other places on the moon where we have clear pictures of facilities just like this. Not facilities just like this facility, but pictures just as clear. And I wonder if when the LRO went up there as the first of the return to the moon missions, and it started sending back these crystal clear pictures of facilities like we're looking at tonight, I wonder if that's really the reason they said, time out, that's it, game called, we're not going back to the moon.
Well, you know what? If for that to be true, this picture that you're showing in this facility, it has to be a military site.
Well, you would think so.
You know what? Especially getting back to that picture, that's the one I'm referring to. You mentioned that view that they're looking away from us. How did you determine that they're looking away into the shadows and not towards us?
Because when we pull back, we can see that it's all hanging on the edge over there.
Well, to me it looks like, if it is a facility, you always go for the high ground. I'm sure there's, higher ground, as you pointed out.
Well, obviously a building has many sides, and one side is facing us, true. But that's hanging on the edge over there. It's not hanging on the edge over here, on this side.
I see what you're saying. That facility, since they didn't blur that out, NASA didn't blur that out, it's up to speculation, and I understand you're asking for qualified people to speculate.
Yeah.
But the fact that they blurred other areas out must mean that it's not open to speculation.
Yes, I agree. Whatever is under the blur, whatever is under the smudge, has to be something absolutely freaking important.
Exactly. Kevin, thank you for bearing with my little idiosyncrasies, and I'll let other people call in who might want to venture on what that facility is.
All right, thanks for the call.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, we're talking about the one or the other crater, and the facility that is there. The telephone number is 623-444-5889. 623-444-5889. If you are not in the USA and you're not in Canada, then you can either call us. So, okay, look, if you're in the USA or Canada, there's the telephone number, 623-444-5889. But if you're not in the USA and you're not in Canada, you can call that number, or you can use the flash message option on our website. Now, we provide that for people who are not in the USA and not in Canada because international long-distance calls can be expensive. And so that's why we provide that. It's a flash message feature, and we invite you to use it if you're outside of the USA and outside of Canada. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Kevin, this is Brent from Wyoming.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what that is because I honestly don't know. But I'm going to make a suggestion to you.
All right.
Go back to when they said they canceled the Apollo flights.
Uh-huh.
They said one of the astronauts said that they don't want us here.
Right.
Now, given the almost 40 years since that, the United States has been developing military. We don't know what their level of technology is. What is the possibility that they photograph something up there that scares them so much they had to change their pants?
Well, I think there's every possibility of that. I think probably within NASA and even within the military, there probably has been a debate as to whether the photographs they had actually showed technology beyond their capability. And I think that with these photographs, it's clear enough for them to tell. And so, there is a possibility that they have seen technology beyond their capability.
That's my thought as to why Obama said we're not going back.
Yeah, the money thing doesn't make sense when they were passing out $1 trillion like it was candy. And it's like they just reached into a big bag of money and threw it into the wind and kept doing it until they got $1 trillion thrown into the wind. And then, but we can't afford to go to the moon. That doesn't make sense. And you remember, you've been listening to the show a long time, you remember that when that happened, I said that doesn't make sense.
Yes, I do.
And but now this might make sense. This picture and others similar might make sense as to why they decided we're not going back. Yeah.
Now, could you put that picture of the kind of pipe-shaped building back up?
Yeah. It's up.
Because in front of that pipe shape, it looks to me like there might be... You say it looks like a globe. I say it looks like a suspended light.
A suspended light?
Like there's a light hovering in the air, in the atmosphere, about 3/4 of the way up that building in front of the ark.
Yeah, but I can see the dark sphere around it.
I can see what you're talking about, but I'm tempted to say that might be in the background.
Well, it might be. Could be. And what would the significance of that be? What would the significance of that be?
That if it's a hovering light, they have streetlights they don't need poles for.
It might be on a pole that we can't see. It may be a dark pole in the dark shadow there.
Yeah, that's true.
But you can see this pipe rests on top of a rectangular building. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then beyond it, out there in the upper left-hand corner, there's a big building out there.
Yeah, I know. And if you look down at the base of that slope, just to the right and down from where you have this picture zoomed in, there's a big building down there too.
On this picture?
Not on the one you have zoomed in. Zoom out a little bit and then go back down to the bottom of the slope to the right.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm seeing what.
It looks to me like a big rectangular slab. Might be a building, I don't know. Might be a kind of like a warehouse type thing, I don't know.
Might be. In the picture that I've got up right now, we can see this is, the foothill of the mountain. And it comes all the way down to the crater floor over there on the right. There's a sharp point where it comes to an end.
That great big white slab right next to the tip of the peak, or tip of the ridge or whatever.
Okay. If you zoom in on that, it actually looks like a big cylindrical tank.
Yeah.
If it's zoomed in.
But that was my thought.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate it. And you don't want to hazard a guess as to what you think this might be?
I would say a mining facility, office buildings for a mining facility, but I don't know.
Okay. Perhaps it might be.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Yep.
All right. Bye. All right. 623-444-5889. That would be the number to call. And I want to hear from some of you who are engineers. Not only, I want to hear from everybody. And first-time callers, if you've never called, hazard a guess. What do you think about all of this? But those of you who are engineers or physicists or aerospace people, you've got some kind, maybe an architect, you've got some kind of opinion as to what type of facility this is. I want to hear from you. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Kevin, this is Steve from Georgia.
Hi, Steve.
Kevin, could you bring that picture up again of your the picture that was just on the screen, please?
Zoomed in?
Yes, sir.
All right. It's up.
Because what I'm seeing on there that no one has mentioned yet, in the kind of upper left, above that pipe-shaped thing, do you see those two spherical-shaped buildings sitting side by side with circles on top of them?
No.
Okay. In the dead center of the picture, there's a dark area, and it's kind of surrounded by something. And if you move up to the left of that a little bit, on the ridge line, is what it looks like. But as I look at it, I see two spherical-shaped buildings sitting right close to each other with dark circles at the top of them.
Yeah, right up next to that big building?
Yeah.
I see that.
Okay, now it's interesting that those are two spherical shapes. What's banging in my gong right now, banging in my head, is that is basically the shape of the human head. The human head is not a perfect sphere, but it's basically spherical. And one of the reasons a human head is shaped that way is because it can withstand changes in pressure gradient, and it can withstand blows, either from inside or outside. If you were to fall and hit your head, the impact of of the blow against your head is fairly evenly distributed around the head because of the spherical shape. You know, unless it's sharp and traumatic. And so if you were to design a building that was spherical, that was round like that, I'm thinking about changes in gravitational field, perhaps, inside the building. And if there was something that you were doing that required zero gravity or rapid changes in gravity, I would think you would want the building that housed that thing to be spherical in shape. And there's two of them sitting side by side. I mean, I noticed them right away. They just jumped right out at me. And, you know, aside from all the perfectly straight lines and all the 90-degree angles that we see in the picture, you know, and we know nature doesn't make 90-degree angles. You know, those have to be artificially created. You know, those are dead giveaways for objects that just don't naturally occur. You know, and then now you're sweeping down on the pyramid and the facility next to the pyramid. You know, I mean that's full of angles that don't normally occur in nature.
Well, plus, take a look. It looks like you're looking at two gigantic columns. You can even see the flare out at the top of each column.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they're right up front.
Yeah, but now look at the pyramid. Do you see a rectangular blur right across the pyramid near the top?
I sure do.
I would love to know what's the deal with that. Now, I'm going to zoom back out, and you can see this pyramid. I mean, you can see it, and you can see the shadow of it. So it is a pyramid, but now notice it doesn't look like the ground around it. You see that?
Right. It's a completely different consistency.
Now let me zoom in again and ask you, do you think that's crystal?
I wish we had that picture in color. That could very well be crystal. That's completely different, and it refracts the light entirely different too. That's very likely crystal. Now, I hope that my speculation has been just outlandish and foolish enough that it'll stimulate some of your more qualified listeners. And I know you got a lot of viewers out there, Kevin, that are scientists, you know, who, like you say, they're looking at this stuff and they pretty much know what this is. They could probably tell you within an 80%, 90% certainty what they're looking at. Now, maybe they're busy doing something else tonight, but I wish they would call in and advance this investigation here, Kevin. This is too important to pass up. No, this is incredible.
Have you ever seen anything like this on the moon before?
Not exactly like this, and I've seen the Jose Escamilla movie. Now, Jose's movie has some very interesting things on it, but this is something else.
It really is. I mean, this is pretty undeniable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, every time I look at the picture you're showing on the screen right now, I see those two domed structures, those two spherical structures. They just stand out to me. I think once you see them, you can't not see them anymore. You know, and I saw them right away, and I thought, why would you make a spherical structure?
Yeah. Hey, we got to step away for a break. You want to hang on through the break? Steve, do you want to hang on?
Oh, sure, I can do that.
All right, we'll be back, folks, right after this.
I think the government does know. I can't back that up, but I think that at Wright-Patterson Field, if you could get into certain places, you'd find out what the Air Force and the government knows about UFOs. Reportedly, a spaceship landed. It was all hushed up, quieted, and nobody have never heard about much of it. I called Curtis LeMay and I said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this secret stuff. Could I go in there? I've never heard him get mad, But he got madder than hell at me, cussed me out, said, don't ever ask me that question again.
From Chesapeake, Virginia, and you are smart because you are listening to the Kevin Smith Show. You don't know
And welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. We are talking about the Tycho crater. Some people pronounce it Tycho, and at least one caller calls it one crater or another. Sorry, I just had to go for that. Anyway, on the telephone with me is Steve from Georgia, and Steve, I just wanted you to have the opportunity to wrap up what you were talking about. You said that you have never seen anything like this before on the moon.
Right. And though I've seen Jose Escamilla's movie, which is pretty mind-blowing, and episodes that you yourself have had, Kevin, show some pretty mind-blowing things, too. This is taking it to another level. And I would have to speculate that if we're seeing things like this and then not going back, suddenly deciding not to go back, I would have to say that that's not ours. And by ours, I mean it's not of this earth. I believe, those things are there, but they were made by somebody else who doesn't want us snooping around. God, I can't remember what was on the tip of my mind a minute ago. I'm getting old too, Kevin.
Okay, I'm putting a picture
anyway,
up.
I think that about covers it, and I hope someone more qualified does call in.
All right, I've just put a picture up, and let me see if I can get a little better shot of that.
When we blasted the moon with a missile?
Yeah, I remember
that?
Uh-huh.
Where did that land, do you know?
South. Very South Pole. I don't know why, but for some reason when I had that picture up, the audio went away.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, on the TV broadcast, the audio went away. I don't know why. Okay, so let's go back. This picture that is up has a red circle, and the reason I'm showing you this, I want everybody to do this. You go over to that website that's on your screen. I've got the URL there. You copy that down. You go over there and download this picture, and right under that red circle, there's a hill. Follow that hill down to the bottom of the hill, to the floor of the crater. And right there, zoom in, and you will see what looks like a crystal wall. And over behind that wall, a huge rectangular opening into the ground.
And isn't the monument in that area too, Kevin?
Now, which monument?
You remember the monument that looked like a huge statue?
Oh, yeah. It's not. I don't think it is. I don't think it's near this crater.
I see. Well, the longer I looked at that thing, the more reptilian it looked. I kept reviewing it afterwards, and it looked so reptilian. And I wonder if this belongs to them.
Well, it might. It certainly might. Yeah, you want to hazard a guess as to what kind of facility this is?
Well, when I think of the spherical objects, I'm thinking of gravitational changes and perhaps dimensional portals. And when I look at that dark opening, that big tube, like a pipe sitting there, that might be, and that light that seems to be suspended over it, what if that is a mothership? What if that's a craft, an aircraft, lowering itself down into that big opening there? And maybe they get some of their fuel is an interdimensional substance of some sort that is way beyond our technology to manufacture or use.
Well, that's an interesting thought. It's one I had not considered. Might be.
If I were to write a short story about this site, if I were to write something creative about it, that's the direction I'd go.
Well, write something about what you think about it and put it in our forums.
Well, maybe I will, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, and have a good evening. All right. How about you? 623-444-5889. You have seen on your screen here tonight amazing things. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. NASA did it. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
This is Mike from Kentucky, Kevin.
Hello, Mike.
I'd like to offer a little bit different suggestion about what we're looking at there.
All right.
I think we're looking at $7 trillion of American money that's missing.
You might be right, Mike. You very well could be.
It's a possibility that we are.
So you think that's an American facility?
I think that it's somebody's facility financed by us.
What makes you think that?
$7 trillion went away. They claim they bailed out the banks. Well, I think that was just a cover story.
Well, I'm not sure where all that money went, but I would have to agree with you that the whole story smelled like fish. But, okay, so what makes you think that this facility is paid for with American dollars?
Well, I think one thing that makes me think of that is that this whole scenario that's going on now about end of days and how the rats are running for holes, and some of them are looking for a place away from the earth, that they may have been working on this, and the $7 trillion that came out in a couple of years ago now have been going to getting their holes ready for them.
So you think this may be a resort on the moon, huh?
Not a resort. It's going to wind up being a prison.
Well, you might be right. You could be right. We have had people for years that have been saying that we have bases on the moon, so this could be, if they are correct, this could be one of them.
Well, what's a better way to draw attention away from what we're doing on the moon than to say we've been warned off and told not to go back?
Yeah, well...
And see this false flag that they're supposedly trying to run over in London by the 5th of August, I think, 4th or 5th of August, could be tied in with all of this, too. The bad aliens are coming. The bad aliens are coming.
What's your source of information about a false flag over in London?
It's basically just things that I have received, from my contacts that I receive my information from over the internet and, Skype and things where I talk one-on-one with people.
Okay. So you think they're actually going to try it?
Of it.
Do you think they're actually? I would rather use, like you say, use a little common sense when dealing with this stuff, because, there's too much hype going on. People are getting all paranoid and everything.
we just live till we don't, as you say, Kevin, and that's the way it has to be.
Do you think they're actually going to try it?
I think they would if they thought they could get away with it, but I really don't think they will. My personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They're counting on the end of this 2012 thing and the poll shifts that people are predicting. All this doom and gloom, which I'm not going to worry about. I'm just going to live it one day at a time.
Well, yeah. I will say this, even though I don't think there's any significance to 2012, personally, I don't. At the same time, even before I had ever heard of 2012, I had what I call a go bag. And the go bag has survival stuff in it so that if whatever comes, if it's an earthquake or if there's a flood or some big storm and the electricity goes out, I have a bag of stuff that I can survive on. And so I say all the time, I think you ought to have one and be ready for whatever happens. And if I'm wrong about 2012, I'm going to find out, and I'm going to find out when the rest of the planet finds out.
Well, there's definitely a lot of paranoia in this world, and it's been going on for 50 years.
Yeah.
And the Y2K thing, got worked into a frenzy, and it didn't amount to anything. And now they're doing the same thing with the 2012 thing. And when 2012 fails to produce the results, oh well, it's 2015 or it's 2020.
Yeah, our calculations were off.
Backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Thanks for the call, man. Good thoughts.
All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. 623-444-5889. 623-444-5889. And if you're outside of the USA, you're outside of Canada, I'd like to hear from you. I know we have scientists all across this world that watch this show and that listen to this show. And I would like to hear from you in a flash message if you need to go that route. It's not a problem. It's there for you. If you're outside the USA and outside of Canada, I want to hear from you what you think that facility is. It's interesting to me how peculiarly and specifically quiet it is tonight on that issue. Don't you find that interesting? There are people who are engineers, there are people who are architects, there are people who are scientists of one kind or another who looked at that facility on the moon, and in their head, immediately they said to themselves, well, that looks like, and they filled in the blank. And isn't it interesting how specifically quiet that is? We're not hearing from them. What has you people so scared? What has the scientists and engineers and architects and aerospace people that looked at this and in their mind they said, it looks like this? What has you so scared that you are sitting on your telephone and you're not calling us to tell us what you think that is? Something about it has you terrified. What is it? 623-444-5889. There's always a reason for silence. Silence doesn't happen. Silence is caused. There's always a reason for it. I'd like to know what that reason is. If you're not willing to tell me what the reason is, at least call and tell me what you think that facility is. What kind of a facility you think that looks like. We've got people all over America. We've got people all over Canada. We've got people all over Mexico, all over South America, people all over the UK, all over Northern Europe, Central Europe, Southern Europe, Africa, Australia, and all over Asia. And in all of that, in the millions of you listening, there are scientists. What do you think it is? We'll be back right after this. And welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. Tonight we are taking a look at this amazing photograph from NASA. It's not new. Well, now it's relatively new because the satellite's only been up there since 2009. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the LRO. And so we've been taking a look at this photograph of the Tycho/Tycho crater. A very, very high-resolution photograph, and yet it's not the highest resolution. This is the highest one they've released. It's not the highest resolution this camera can take. Keep that in mind. And yet, at this resolution, you can zoom in on the ground and get right up on it, and you can see individual rocks on the ground. So this is a very high-resolution photograph. And we've been talking about something that's in this photograph, and what we've been talking about is a facility, a big facility, actually a couple of places where the facility is visible, or a couple of places where there are facilities. And let me say to the caller who just called, I pushed the button, but my phone equipment did not answer the phone, so give it another try, and we'll try to get you in here before the end of the show. But we've been zooming in on and taking a look at the facilities that are in this picture. This is not geography. This is not natural. This is built. And, unless maybe we have a geologist that can give us a call and that can explain to us how geology builds stuff that looks like architecture. I'd like to hear that if that's the case. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Oh, hi, Kevin. This is Steve from Reno, Nevada.
Hi, Steve.
That previous caller, I think it's very possible that we're looking at some type of American technology. And I'd like to go back to like these Stevensville, Texas sightings and the Phoenix sightings, these huge craft that people are seeing. Those craft are probably American military secret technology. They're like interplanetary. Something that big could just move easily to the moon or Mars. They could transport like a lot of building equipment up there.
Okay. So you buy the idea that this might be an American base up there?
Yeah. If it's not, then it means it's somebody else's past civilization, and they're not going to let people be enlightened on that level. It's not in public institutions' best interest to have our population enlightened with that kind of knowledge.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
What
do you think about the pyramid down there at the bottom of the ridge, on the floor of the crater? What about that pyramid?
I think that's kind of blurry, but then it goes maybe along with these pyramids on Mars. Maybe pyramids is some kind of a cosmic thing in Egypt, the Mayans, all over ancient civilizations. Building for even in Las Vegas, the Luxor Hotel, there's a pyramid. So maybe it's some kind of you reach certain developmental level of consciousness, and you start building that.
Okay, but my question is, do you think the pyramid is something that if that facility is an American facility, do you think the pyramid was also built by the Americans, or is that simply an ancient ruin?
It's possible that that's an ancient ruin, some kind of archaic past something or other, and we built on top of that. Maybe some ancient alien civilization had something that's of interest there, some minerals, rare in minerals, and then American built on top of that other mining structures to take out whatever. And like I said, I think these huge crafts like Stephenville, Texas sighting, the Phoenix, I think they're American black projects.
Well, it might very well be.
There's Gordon Duff from Veterans Today. Sometimes he seems to think these huge things people are seeing, they have that. I don't think that's alien, and they can move off the planet. So the moon is not really that far, so they can move up huge amounts of surprise. That's my kind of take on that, Kevin. So.
All right. Well, thanks for the call.
All right, have a good evening, Kevin. Thanks. Great show.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one quick call if you call right now. And I find it very interesting that the scientific community, and I know you're listening, what scared you? What is it? The silence says I'm on target. What scared you? What is it when you looked at that scared you and you didn't call? It's the silence that says I'm on target. But I'd like to know from someone who's an engineer, an architect, some kind of scientist, what you thought when you saw the picture of the facility. What is it that came to your mind and you said, oh my God, that looks like... Well, apparently, we're not going to get to hear from you tonight. Please realize the silence of science does you great harm with the general public. Somebody's on the moon. I don't know who. That might be an American facility. That might be a Russian facility. We've heard that I've heard it both ways. I've heard that both the Americans and the Russians have bases up there. I've heard we have a joint base up there. It could be a base of built by off-worlders, commonly referred to as extraterrestrials. That's a possibility. I don't know. I have no idea who built it. I have no idea what its purpose is, what its function is. But I can look at it with eyes I've had all my life and tell you that doesn't look like boulders and earth slides, or not earth, soil slides, moon slides. Doesn't look like debris. It's very well organized. It looks like architecture, and a lot of it. Lots of architecture. Somebody's on the moon. Is it us? Maybe. But somebody's there. For those of you who are new to the genre and you've been thinking, this is crazy, this is nuts, there's nobody on the moon. The moon, everybody knows the moon is dead. Well, let me remind you that what everybody knows is the absolute lowest common denominator of knowledge there is. And almost every time, it's dead wrong. Everybody once knew the earth was flat, don't you know? Almost everything that everybody knows, they're wrong. Somebody's on the moon. It's like that house next door. The evidence is screaming somebody's there. And yet there are a lot of people still saying it's got to be your imagination. Well, that's it. That's a wrap for this evening. My friends call me Steel Eye. My enemies do too. You may call me whatever you'd like to call me. Just keep coming back again and again and again. Until next time, so long, everybody.